I discovered my husband had a secret bank account. He had been hiding from me for 2 years, and when I found out where the money was really going, I wished it had just been an affair. I have always been the one who handled our finances. Not because Marcus could not do it, he is a smart man, but because early in our marriage we figured out pretty quickly that I was the one who actually enjoyed it. I liked spreadsheets. I liked knowing where every dollar was going. I liked the feeling of a budget that balanced and a savings account that was growing steadily. Marcus would joke that I should have been an accountant, and I would laugh and say somebody has to keep this household from falling apart. 6 years of marriage, a house we bought together 3 years in, a dog named Biscuit who sleeps at the foot of our bed and has opinions about everything. A life that from the outside, and honestly from the inside too, looked genuinely good. I was not looking for anything wrong. I want to be clear about that because I think it matters. I was not suspicious. I was not in a bad patch with Marcus. Things were not perfect, no marriage is, but we were fine. We were comfortable and familiar and building toward things together, or I thought we were. It started with a notification I was not supposed to see. We had a joint checking account and a joint savings account, and I managed both through the same banking app on my phone. One evening in October, I was sitting on the couch after dinner and I opened the app to move some money over for a bill that was coming up, and I noticed the balance in our joint savings was lower than it should have been. Not dramatically lower, just enough to make me pause. I thought I had miscalculated. I went back through the last month of transactions and everything looked normal on the surface. Regular deposits, regular withdrawals, nothing that jumped out. But the number was still off. Not by a lot, maybe $300, but I knew that account the way I knew our grocery budget and something was not adding up. I told myself I would look at it more carefully over the weekend. I closed the app and put my phone down, and Marcus came in from the kitchen with 2 cups of tea and we watched television for the rest of the evening, and I did not think about it again until Saturday morning. Saturday morning, I sat down at my laptop with my coffee and I pulled up 6 months of statements instead of 1. And I started going through them line by line the way I always do, methodically, column by column. It took me about 40 minutes to find it. There was a recurring transfer. Small, quiet, the kind of amount that individually would not alarm anyone. Between $80 and $120, varying slightly each time so it did not look like an automatic payment, happening roughly every 3 to 4 weeks. It had been going out to an account I did not recognize. Not a vendor, not a bill, just a string of numbers attached to a transfer description I had never seen before. 14 months of it. I counted twice. I sat back in my chair and looked at the number I had written on the notepad next to my laptop. Just over $1,800. Gone in pieces so small I had never caught it in my monthly checks. I heard Marcus in the other room. He was on the phone with his brother, laughing about something. Biscuit wandered in and put his head on my knee, and I scratched his ears without thinking about it. I looked at the account number on my notepad, and I thought about how to find out whose it was. I did not ask Marcus. Not yet. Because something in my gut, that particular quiet alarm that I have learned over the years to take seriously, told me to find out more before I said a single word. And what I found out over the next 2 weeks turned everything I thought I knew completely upside down. I am the kind of person who solves problems by gathering information first. It is how I approach everything. Work, home, decisions of any size. I do not react until I understand. So I did not react. I gathered. The account number on its own did not tell me much. I could not look up whose account it was. That is not information that is publicly available. But I could look at the pattern of the transfers, and I could look at what else was happening around those dates. I started cross-referencing. Every date a transfer had gone out, I went back through Marcus's schedule, our shared Google Calendar, his credit card statements, which I also had access to because we had always operated that way, fully open, or so I had believed. The transfers clustered around certain weekends. 3-day weekends, long weekends, the occasional week where he had told me he was traveling for work. Marcus works in sales and he does travel. It is a legitimate part of his job, so I had never questioned it. He would tell me he was going to wherever, and I would say, okay, have a safe trip, and that was that. I pulled his work travel records. We have a shared email account for household things, and his work confirmation emails sometimes came through there when he forwarded things for me to have on file. I went back 14 months. There were 4 trips in the company system that did not match what he had told me. I sat with that for a long time. I want to describe the feeling accurately because I think it is important. It was not panic. It was not even anger yet. It was more like the moment when you are doing a puzzle and you realize the piece you have been forcing into a space does not actually belong there, and the whole section you thought was finished has to come apart. A kind of structural collapse happening very quietly inside your understanding of things. I called my friend Dana. She is a paralegal and she is one of the most practically minded people I know. I told her what I had found, not all of it, just the financial piece, and I asked her if she knew how I could find out more about an account number without tipping anyone off. She told me I could contact my bank and explain that I had noticed unauthorized transfers from my joint account and ask them to investigate. She said the bank had an obligation to look into it and that I might be able to get more information through that process than I could get on my own. I called the bank on Monday morning from my car in the parking lot of my office. I explained calmly that I had noticed transfers from my account to an unfamiliar account number over the past 14 months and that I had not authorized them and wanted to understand what was happening. The woman I spoke to was professional and patient. She said she would flag it for the fraud department and that someone would be in touch within 5 to 7 business days. It took 3. The woman who called me back was from the fraud and disputes team. She was kind and careful with her words. She told me the transfers were going to an account held at the same bank, which was how they had been processed so cleanly, and that the account appeared to be a personal savings account opened approximately 16 months ago. She asked if I wanted to dispute the transfers as unauthorized. I asked her if she could tell me anything else about the account. She paused. Then she said that the account was a joint account. I asked whose names were on it. She said she could only confirm one of them because it matched the name on our joint account, Marcus. I thanked her and told her I would call back about the dispute, and I ended the call and I sat in my car for 11 minutes without moving. Marcus had a secret savings account. He had been quietly draining our money into it for over a year, and someone else had their name on it too. I had assumed the worst thing I could find would be an affair. I was not prepared for what it actually was. The next few days I moved through my normal life like someone operating on 2 levels simultaneously. On the surface, I was fine. I made dinner, I walked Biscuit, I asked Marcus about his day and listened to his answers. Underneath, I was pulling on every thread I could find. I needed to know whose name was on that account. The bank would not tell me. I understood that legally they could not. But I kept thinking about the other pieces I had. The trips that did not match, the transfers clustering around certain weekends, the account that had been opened 16 months ago, months after something I had nearly forgotten about. 16 months ago, Marcus had told me he wanted to start putting aside some personal spending money. He had framed it as wanting to feel less like he had to account for every little purchase. Coffees, small things, nothing major. I had thought it was reasonable. Lots of couples did that. I had suggested we each take a small amount monthly into our own personal accounts for that kind of spending. He had agreed and then said he would handle setting his up. I had not thought about it again because I trusted him. I went back through everything with that framing now, and things that had seemed unconnected started forming a shape I did not want to look at directly. I called his mother. I know how that sounds, but let me explain. I like his mother. We have always gotten along genuinely well, and I call her regularly. It would not be unusual. I called her to chat, and at some point I steered the conversation toward family, toward how everyone was doing. She mentioned Marcus's brother. She mentioned a cousin who had just had a baby. Then I asked, as casually as I could manage, how Marcus's father was doing. His father had been having some health issues the year before, and it was a natural thing to ask. She said, "Oh, he is much better," and then she said something that stopped my breath. She said it had been such a relief when Marcus stepped in to help with the bills last year. She did not know what they would have done. I said that was so good to hear. She said Marcus had been so private about it. He had not wanted to make a big deal of it. He had just quietly helped for months and never asked for anything back. I said he had a good heart. She agreed, and we talked for a few more minutes, and I got off the phone and I sat very still. The second name on that account, it was his father. Marcus had not been hiding money for another woman. He had been hiding money to pay his parents' medical bills without telling me, for over a year, in secret, because he had not wanted to have a conversation with me about it. I did not know whether to cry or to be furious, and for a long moment I was completely unable to tell the difference between the two, because what I felt when I finally understood the full truth was more complicated than anything I had been prepared for. I gave myself 48 hours before I said anything, not to gather more information this time, just to figure out what I actually felt and what I wanted to say. I went through a lot of different emotions in those 48 hours, and I am not going to pretend they were all reasonable. There was relief, genuine relief, that there was no other woman, that the marriage I thought I had was not a fiction in that particular way. There was gratitude underneath that, a kind of complicated warmth about the fact that Marcus loved his parents enough to quietly sacrifice for them. And then there was the anger, which was also real and also legitimate. He had lied to me, not with words, not exactly, but with omission and misdirection, and the careful arrangement of information so that I would not see what was happening. He had taken money from our joint account without telling me. He had opened an account with his father's name on it and funneled our savings into it for 14 months. He had let me manage our finances, trusting the numbers, and he had been quietly changing the numbers without my knowledge. He had decided on his own that I could not be trusted with this information. That was what I kept coming back to. Not the money exactly, the decision he had made about me. I confronted him on a Thursday evening. I waited until after dinner, until Biscuit had been walked, until there was nothing left to do and we were both just sitting in the living room. I had the notepad with the numbers in my hand. I told him I knew about the account. He went very still. I told him I knew about the transfers. I told him I knew about his father. I told him I knew how long it had been going on. He did not try to deny it. I will give him that. He looked at me, and he looked at the notepad, and he took a long breath, and he told me everything. His father had needed a procedure that insurance only partially covered. There had been follow-up care. It had stretched longer than expected. He had not wanted to come to me because we had been saving for something of our own, a renovation we had been planning, and he had not wanted me to feel like we had to choose between his parents and our plans. I listened to all of it. Then I told him that by making that decision for me, he had taken away my ability to choose. That I would have chosen his parents. Obviously, I would have. And the fact that he had not believed that about me was what hurt more than anything else. He was quiet for a long time after that. Then he said he knew, and that he was sorry. And that he had told himself it was the right thing, and somewhere along the way had stopped examining whether it actually was. That conversation cracked something open between us, and what came out of it was not at all what I expected. We talked for a long time that night. Longer than we had talked in probably a year, which was itself something worth paying attention to. Biscuit fell asleep between us on the couch, and outside it rained, and we just talked. Marcus told me things he had not told me before. Not just about his father, but about how he had been feeling in the months leading up to all of it. Stretched. Like he was supposed to be managing more than he was telling anyone. His parents had always leaned on him as the more financially stable of their two sons, and he had worn that quietly for years. And at some point the weight of it had gotten heavy enough that instead of putting it down, he had just started carrying it differently, in a way I could not see. I told him I understood that. I did not tell him it made it okay because it did not make it okay, but I understood it. I also told him something I had not fully articulated even to myself before that night, that I had spent 6 years being the person who managed everything, who tracked every number, who kept the household running precisely and carefully, and that somewhere in that role I had maybe become someone he felt he had to hide difficulty from, rather than someone he could bring it to. That landed differently than I expected. He looked at me and said that was exactly it, and that he had not known how to say it. We sat with that for a while. I want to be honest about the state of us in that period. We were not in crisis the way you imagine a couple in crisis. We were not screaming or sleeping in separate rooms. We were two people who had quietly drifted into a version of partnership that had some gaps in it that neither of us had examined closely enough. The secret account was the most visible symptom of something that had been developing for a while. I asked him to agree to 3 things. The account needed to be closed or made fully transparent. Any financial decision affecting our joint savings needed to be made together going forward, no exceptions, including decisions about his family. And we needed to talk to someone, a couples therapist. Not because the marriage was broken, but because we clearly had a communication pattern that had gotten us here, and I did not want it to get us somewhere worse. He agreed to all 3 without hesitation. The account was closed within the week. The remaining balance, just over $4,000, we transferred to his parents together, with me on the phone with his mother explaining that we both wanted to help and that she should not hesitate to ask in the future. His mother cried. That part was hard in a soft way. We started seeing a therapist the following month. Her name is Renata, and she has a very calm office and a very direct way of asking questions, and I liked her immediately. But about 6 weeks into our sessions, she said something that shifted the way I understood everything that had happened, and I have thought about it almost every day since. Renata asked us in one of our early sessions to each describe, in our own words, what we thought the other person needed most from us in the marriage. Marcus went first. He said I needed to feel in control. He said it without any edge to it, just as an observation, and I could tell he had thought about it carefully. He said he believed I felt safe when things were organized and predictable, and that his instinct when things got difficult was to manage them out of my sight, because he did not want to introduce chaos into something I needed to feel stable. He was not wrong. And hearing it said plainly, without accusation, was one of the stranger experiences of my adult life. Then it was my turn. I said Marcus needed to feel capable. That being the person who handled things, who solved problems, who showed up for his family without burdening anyone else, was central to how he understood himself, and that asking for help, even from me, felt like a failure of that identity in a way he had not learned to challenge. Renata nodded at both of us and said that what she was hearing was 2 people who had been trying very hard to protect each other, and had ended up, in the process, protecting themselves from each other instead. I have thought about that sentence a lot. It did not excuse what Marcus did. He made a unilateral decision about our shared finances, and he sustained it for over a year. And that was a real breach of trust, regardless of his intentions. We both know that. We have said it plainly to each other and to Renata, and it is not something we have papered over with the more comfortable parts of the explanation. But it gave me a way to understand it that was more complete than betrayal. It was not betrayal exactly. It was 2 people with different fears accidentally building a wall between them and then being surprised when neither of them could see over it. We are not the same as we were before October. I do not think you can go through something like this and come out identical on the other side. There is a version of our marriage that existed before I opened that banking app on a Wednesday evening and found a number that did not add up, and that version is gone. What replaced it is something more honest and more careful, and I think more solid. I still manage our finances. But now Marcus sits with me once a month and we go through everything together, and it is not a chore. It is actually something I look forward to in a quiet way. His parents are doing well. His father had a checkup recently and the news was good. His mother calls me sometimes just to talk and I always pick up. Biscuit still sleeps at the foot of our bed. Some things you hold on to. Some things you let change. The hardest and most important work of a marriage, I think, is knowing the difference. I do not have a clean ending to offer you. Real life does not usually come with one. What I have is a Thursday evening that broke something open and a long conversation in the rain and a therapist named Renata who asks very good questions. And a marriage that feels, for the first time in a while, like something both of us are actually inside of together. That is enough. More than enough.